It's that time, Friar Faithful. Time to discuss everything going on with the Padres. We've gathered the entire 97.3 The Fan crew together to bring you the most in-depth discussion on the Friars in our weekly Padres Roundtable, presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. Here's your host, Ben Higgins.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the penultimate regular season edition of our Padres Roundtable on 97.3 The Fan, presented commercial-free by Roundtable Pizza. It is pizza royalty. That's not an incorporator word. That means second to last roundtable of the season. I'm joined today by most of the crew, other than Chris Ella, who's on vacation. To my left today is Craig Elston. Hello, Craig.
I've always thought you were the penultimate host here in San Diego.
Thank you. Woodsy right in the middle today. How do you feel in the middle of all the action?
I am Mr. Penultimate, to be honest with you.
And then a little flip on the left side here. We've got Annie Heilbrunn.
Hello, Ben. That's because we're able to flip. I mean, we're
nice.
flexible.
Very flexible. And sitting opposite me on the other end is Tony Gwynn Jr. Hello, Tony.
Hello, Ben. How are you?
Good to see everybody. All right, Annie, I heard you did a great job last week. Thank you for filling in while I was on vacation.
Appreciate it. Not as good as you do, but
I was out of town, and
I
I didn't get to hear it. And now Woods has me all spun out that I'm going to ask all the same questions that you did last week. So
I did take as many of those as I could.
I'm going to start with one that you couldn't possibly have asked, and that is just taking the current temperature of the Padres, who went 5-1 since the last roundtable. Road sweep of the Giants, taking 2 of 3, nearly a sweep of the Houston Astros. Padres own the best record in baseball since the All-Star break. They've had several good runs since July. So, in your opinion, and why don't we start with Annie, since she hosted last week, are the Padres playing their best baseball of the season right now?
I believe they are, and I believe that they have found even yet another gear that they're working toward now that they can see the light at the end of the tunnel with the playoffs. I think you're seeing, especially kind of like the superstar players, but even everyone in the clubhouse, kind of just taking it up another level, getting themselves ready for what the playoff experience is going to be like. So I think that they're very focused and locked in right now.
Yeah, Padres had, Tony, some really good runs, especially post-All-Star break when you guys were on the East Coast and long winning streaks. But I don't know, it feels like right now they're as complete of a team as we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, this is we've kind of seen this coming since the second half began, and there was that extremely hot, month of baseball they had, and then played about 500 ball. But one of the signs of a really good team is you can have your fall off is about 500, and then you can get back on it, and that's what we've seen from this team. It's a combination of everybody starting to get healthy at the right time. I mean, obviously getting you and Joe back has been a huge uplifting piece of it, and getting Toddy back. And so they're healthy, and they are peaking right at the correct time, in my opinion.
And, Craig, that consistency has been a big part. Padres still no more than 2 losses in a row since the All-Star break, and that's continued on all the way here through September.
And that early East Coast great road streak that got us to the point where we could make the trades that happened, that was happening negotiating Adam Major starts and Randy Vasquez starts. And those guys have been replaced by Joe Musgrove and Yu Darvish. There's no bigger upgrade in baseball than what's happened in those 2 rotation slots, just like there's no bigger post-deadline acquisition than getting Fernando Tatis Jr. back, OPSing around 1,000.
And, Woods, I think you'd agree, Padres are passing the eye test. Whatever that is, the Padres seem to be passing it right now.
Well, and they're definitely passing we talked this morning about busting narratives, and there's been some narratives busted, and they went into San Francisco, get that sweep, and you're like, all right, well, it's the Giants, though. I mean, they're scuffling right now. Their offense is non-existent. You sweep the Giants, you handle your business. The Astros are going to be a much tougher test. Well, they won 2 out of 3, and let's be honest, probably should have won all 3. I mean, they're busting narratives every single day. Is there room for improvement on some things? Absolutely. But there's no baseball team out there that can improve on a couple of things.
Now, Mike Schilt has been big on, one game, one opponent at a time all the way through, and I think the Padres have mostly bought in. But we did see some talk from Manny Machado, of all people, after the game yesterday of, what is next to come? A postseason run that he says, I think we're going to see this team again. And there's only one way you could see the Astros again, and that would be in the World Series at the end of the year.
Or in Cancun if you're golfing, if either team makes it. I mean, that's the other way you can do it. But
Tony, as a player, are you okay with that kind of talk from Manny? Like, hey, we expect to see this team again, and that's going to be in a month.
Yeah, and he did it in a way that wasn't like, you had to kind of think about it for a sec. But Yeah, no, I'm. If that's how Manny feels, I'm sure that's how a bunch of guys in that locker room feel, and I'm all for it. Those guys in that locker room, they don't care nothing about myths or narratives. They feel like they've built this team up and they have progressed in a way that they're confident no matter who they're playing. You saw what just transpired against the Astros. That's a good team over there. No matter how down they may be this year, that's a really good team, and that's really been how the Padres have performed against those type of teams all year.
And I think you never want to see confidence cross the line into cockiness, overconfidence, Craig. But I haven't really gotten that sense, even from Manny's comments. It wasn't like, yeah, try to stop us. It was just more like, hey, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, and that should lead us to a good place.
Plus, I would add the context of it's an AC Machado interaction, and they have this kind of playful back and forth.
Right.
And AC went back to him another time to kind of, okay, let me lock this in for the column type situation. I thought he was really trying to show a lot of respect to Houston, is what he was, maybe his intent, as opposed to saying we're about to go win 3 playoff series in the National League playoffs. But I do believe that this is the Padres' final form, and that this final form is capable of beating any team in baseball. Doesn't mean you're gonna in a 2-game out of 3 series, but they've got the team to beat anybody.
Woods, you tend to be the most cautious when it comes to tempting fate of the group, certainly spending some time with you. Are you okay with Manny's comments?
Yeah. I mean, he also told us at the beginning of the year, don't worry about where I'll be at the end of the year. Don't worry about it. I will be exactly where I need to be. And look at that. Look at that. One short of 30 and 100-plus RBI. And I wouldn't have thought it as much as I love him. I would have said, man, you're just going to run out of time. I think you can be better, but you're going to run out of time. He didn't run out of time. So it's kind of like when he says it, I tend to believe it.
And Annie, ultimately, you'd rather have a confident team than one that's lacking confidence at this point in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a team that feels like they've earned it. They have, like they've earned what the place that they're in and the place that they're holding. They've kind of controlled their destiny for this part out of the All-Star break. And so for them, I think that they're feeling like, hey, we're very locked in. We've put in the work, and this is a really special team that we have. I thought it was great. Manny called his shot. The Astros clubhouse was saying that it would be a great matchup, too. So I think it was 2 teams that respect each other and that were pretty, played some intense games and felt like they played them pretty well.
Dubon said, he goes, well, I mean, at least we go 7 in the World Series. It'd be fun to play these guys in a 7-game series.
Right,
So.
that's because the Astros thinking the same thing over there.
Yep.
That's why they are who they are.
Yep.
And I thought maybe more significant than even Manny's comments in that same piece is the comments from Joe Espada, a manager. Well, as a bench coach, he's been there a couple of times for World Series titles, and just observing the San Diego Padres and seeing what he thinks is a team that can make a deep run into the playoffs. Craig,
I look at the opponents and I see a stronger weakness on every single opponent in the National League field than San Diego right now. And I don't think that's braggadocious. I just really look at the team because the biggest difference to me, I mean, you can argue offense. I think this year's offense is better than 2022. Obviously, it doesn't have Juan Soto in it. But that year, the Padres had to turn to Mike Clevenger and Sean Manaea in a National League Championship Series game. This year in that situation, that would be Michael King. I mean, that's just a gigantic difference in terms of looking at – and you know what? I'll even take it a step further. I remember that year, the Astros winning the World Series and looking at them and going – Christian Javier is their 4th starter. This is ridiculous. Like, they get to a Game 4, a must-win situation, and they've got a starter out there that's so much better than the opponent, and that's where that series turned. And I think the Padres right now have that ability within a playoff series, a longer series, to turn it based on the strength of their rotation.
Tony, and this feels like a case of you have to earn your respect in Major League Baseball. Now, you have to respect every opponent, and we hear Mike Schilt talking about that. Even the White Sox coming in, you have to respect them. But as a player, there's a different level of not disrespecting an opponent, but actually like looking at another team and going, oh, that is a good team. And it feels like the Padres have reached that level with the teams they're actually playing where they look at the Padres and go, that's a good team.
Yeah, no, Joe Espada is not the only manager that's felt that way this year. And some of them felt like that early in the season before we've seen this final product. So it's always been there. It's just a matter of seeing it more consistently. And when you start to do it consistently, it's easier to start to see from the outside looking in. You know, when you're constantly winning ball games, and these guys, you know, some of these teams may not be catching the Padres on an everyday basis, but they catch them in the highlights, they catch them on the phone, and I think that starts to kind of resonate with people. And then when you see it in person, and you see the execution that this team puts together on a nightly basis, you can't do anything but respect it at that point.
It's our 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable, presented commercial-free by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. It is pizza royalty. And I want to talk a little bit about Fernando Tatis Jr. for a second. I made an online comment during the game last night, and I was surprised how many Padres fans came out of the woodwork with criticism of Fernando Tatis Jr.
I'm surprised that you're surprised.
Well, I still get the sense that he is the most popular player on the San Diego Padres, and that Manny Machado is the one that gets more criticism usually from even Padres fans. But there were a lot out there, and I was trying to go, okay, you know, yeah, he struck out 3 times, but he's always got the ability to do what he did later in the game, that is hit a home run and change a game with his play. My question for you all, and let's start with Woods in the middle this time. He's on a 9-game hitting streak, 5 home runs. Of course, he missed 2022. He had an up-and-down 2023. He missed a couple of months this year with the stress reaction. Do you feel that Fernando Tatis Jr. is finally and truly back at this point to the player that we kind of remembered from long ago?
Yeah, 100% back. And I think, you know, you miss that much time, it's still going to take you a little bit of time to get caught up and feel comfortable and not maybe jumpy in the box. You get a little jumpy. Like, I totally get it. You got a runner out there. You want to do something big. The crowd's going nuts. So you've seen a lot of the other guys on the team, because they've had 300 at-bats or 400 at-bats, they may be a little bit more calm up there. They're not trying to do so much. Fernando is still, he's a little bit late to the party, but look what he's done, even being a little bit late to the party and missing so much time. So the way he changes the game in the field, the way he changes the game with his arm, his athleticism, and of course his bat, yeah, man, like, he's playing great, and he can still get better. And I think that he will. I mean, it's the more ABs, the more repetitions he gets, the better he's going to play.
Annie, you remember pre-surgery, pre-suspension Tatis. I mean, how different, how same is this player compared the two from then to now?
I think he's even more mature. I do, and I think he understands his role in the team even more, and I think he is someone who was bummed to miss the 2022 playoffs, was bummed to sit on the sidelines in the dugout while this team was killing it and he was injured, and now is loving the opportunity to help his team out. There's not one player on that roster that can't improve, right? That can't get better in some scenarios or whatnot, but I think you got to let Fernando be Fernando and let him find that confidence, which you do lose a little bit when you're injured, I think, and come out there. And he's been showing it. I mean, at the plate, like you said, in the field, in right field, putting pressure on the pitcher. I think you're seeing everything you want to see out of Fernando right now.
Craig, his strikeout rate's actually the lowest of his career this year. You really don't see lapses at all from Fernando Tatis Jr. Is it possible that this is the best version we've ever seen so far? Not saying that he can't get better. Like Annie said, I agree with her, but are we at that level where he is now kind of past where he was before? Because it took him a while to get back.
Well, he's still not 100% healthy.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'll say, to the most basic response to your question, no, this isn't the best, because I think there's an even healthier version of Fernando Tatis Jr. that we could see next year. But I agree with everything the panel has been saying in terms of his maturity has improved. This is the biggest ceiling raiser on the team. He creates dynamic play for the team on the field, at the plate. He's not going to get a hit every time, but I'm reminded of almost LeBron. To Tatis, and I want to be clear about this. As a young player, if LeBron went 2 for 12, it was like, how dare he?
Right.
Overrated.
Right.
Get him out of here. Oh my God, he missed 8 threes. This guy's a joke. And it's because the expectation was that he would literally hit every shot in his career. And that's what I really get from fans on Tatis. If he doesn't get a hit every single time, they continue to bring up the mistakes of 2022. But I tell you what, he handled 23 the best he possibly could have handled it. And I think he has been an exemplar of what you want in 2024.
Tony, where do you see Fernando in his development as a baseball player, the maturity, then to now, where does he stand?
He's light years ahead of where he was from a maturity standpoint. I still think he hasn't hit the ceiling as who he can be as a ball player. He hasn't had consistent baseball over the last 3-4 years, whether it's due to injury or the suspension or not, right? He just hasn't been able to build any kind of continuity with himself. He's dealing with a stress reaction, and that's in his leg. So I mean, like, how dynamic is he when he's still dealing with that? So I think
still pretty dynamic.
Exactly, and that's the point. Yeah. And I caution the everybody. Twitter can sometimes feel like the 14 people that are, hey, he's terrible or we need to get rid of him, can feel like a million. It's just the 14 people that
I always wonder that
like
too, because I understand social media can be very vocal, but at the same time, I always think that for everyone who's not saying it, there's probably 100 people who are also thinking it. So I don't know how accurate it is or not when you see that kind of criticism. Saw it from Manny, early in the season. You have plenty of fans who go, he's washed. This contract is going to be a disaster. Well, Craig, that's turned out just to be absurdly false when it came to Manny Machado and what he's been able to do this year.
I mean, 100%. This is probably the single biggest busted narrative of the 2024 season. And I will tell you, not just some fans, a lot of fans and a lot of smart fans that were making this claim. And it was fighting a headwind to say, no, wait, Manny Machado has been hurt last year and this year. Maybe he's not actually just in irreversible decline.
I challenge the smart fans that were saying that this guy was. Yeah. It is as certain as the clock turning 9 every day that this guy is going to be around 275, 30, and 85. Just look at his baseball card. It says it every year. And so, to me, it's, we'll be here again next year. I promise you.
Oh, there's no question.
We'll be again here. We'll be right here again next year. If he doesn't get off to a blazing start, we'll be right back here again.
Which he won't, because he never really does.
He doesn't. He doesn't, but it'll be the 1 year he does, and then it might calm it down. But I'm just saying, like, we'll be here again on Manny once again.
Yeah.
And at some point, Annie, I mean, he will decline, just as every ball player does, but he's in his prime and should be for several more years.
He is. And two things. One, Manny will always challenge anyone who will look at a player and say, oh, he's past the 30, 31, 32-year-old mark. He's going to decline. Manny loves the player who has longevity and has learned to be a smart player and play the game a smart way and really build on their baseball IQ, which he does every year. He will fight that. I mean, and I think he'll do a good job fighting it. But two, also, talked to him the other day about his arm. I mean, his elbow is still not 100%. He's just like Fernando is. He's going to excel from having an offseason where he gets to train the way he wants to. He gets to rest the way he wants to. He gets to do everything he normally does in an offseason. He's going to probably come back next year even stronger. What he's been doing, dealing with this elbow still not being 100%, has been remarkable.
And, while Ella was busy examining one of the 7 wonders of the world right now, I presume, let me kind of take one of his roles on the show for just a second, and it's one you might be surprised at, but here's one of the places where I do feel analytics has failed baseball fans who are trying to be smart baseball fans. It's in the Zips and Steamer projections, because those projections are built based on every player in the universe, and they come up with a uniform model of at 30 you're here, but 31 you're 90% of that, and 32 you're 90% of that, and so on and so forth. So when Manny's contract came out, Zip Steamer put out a projection, and it showed Manny getting progressively a little bit worse every single year for 11 years. And the thing is, not all players are built the same. Manny Machado is more like an Adrian Beltre. I expect him at 37 to hit 35 home runs.
Well, and Woods, isn't the thing that drives some fans crazy about Manny his leaving some in reserve on a routine ground out? Doesn't that make him more likely to be a player that will manage himself better later in his career?
Yeah, it's it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. And I've spent 162 games fighting it because, as I've said many times, when you're in the presence of somebody that is so self-assured, it's intimidating. Like when I've talked to Manny before, the belief that he has in himself, it's wild to be around it. Like when you can feel it from him. And when he says it, I believe him. and I watch him and I go, well, yeah, I mean, I don't teach my son to leave anything in reserves, but he's 6. I'm like, you run until you don't have knee surgery or elbow surgery, right? It's a different perspective. I trust that man to make the right decisions because he's earned all of that trust. He's earned it. Like, he knows when. You saw there was a play yesterday, and he knew exactly who was running. He was not even looking at first base, and he threw a seed because he knew, I got to get rid of this thing quick. Bro, Arenado doesn't do that. Scott Rowland didn't do that. He knows I got 1 split second, and he gets these guys by a split second every single time. It's like watching a magician, dude. It's crazy.
The internal clock.
The internal clock is bananas. I've never seen anything like it.
And then you have to deal with my quiet self-assurance every single morning.
Yes, and my self-assurance, which is 0. You know, it's just like you're around somebody like that, and you go, how do I not take him at his word? You know, that he's going to be where he needs to be after he consistently proves it.
It's our 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable, presented by Roundtable Pizza. Pizza royalty, going for another 40 minutes or so. All right, so Mike Schilt finally pulled the switch, and I don't know if it was before last Thursday or not, with Jackson Merrill up to the 5th slot in the order. But the question here today is that the last change, or would you make any other adjustments to the Padres starting lineup to maximize their potential effectiveness for the playoffs, Craig?
Yeah, the change happened Saturday up in San Francisco.
That's right, Saturday.
So, yeah, we didn't get to talk about it last week. We were talking about it the week before on the radio. Saying that it should be a good move to move Merrill up at least to 5th. And I do believe this is the last move. Yeah. And I think this is the optimized lineup. I really do. It was different when Profar was hitting 185 for a month, but the Profar that gets hits, I want him 3rd because I like the switch hitter. I love the at-bat he takes. I love the way he battles the pitcher, and I think he's a perfect complement where you've got to Rise the battler, you've got Tatis the free swinger, you've got Profar the battler, and then you've got Manny kind of the opportunist, you know, who'll either battle you or go for that first pitch. I love the mix. Merrill 5 is right. It's getting one of your best players more at-bats, and furthermore, it's getting them connected. Now Merrill's connected to Manny and to Tatis and to Profar. When they're on base, it's his job to knock them in. That's beautiful, and I love the way it's working.
Any changes that you'd make, and how do you feel like the change with Merrill has gone so far?
I like it. I like the lineup the way it is as well. I think it's gone well with Merrill. I think that they took a long time to make that move. They really let him grow into that spot that he had at the bottom of the lineup, and I think that when they finally did, it was a thoughtful move. Also, credit to Jake Cronenworth and credit to the other guys who are moving as well in place of that, because now you have a bottom of the lineup that can be really dangerous too. I mean, there really aren't very many holes in this lineup at all.
Tony, what did you think about the lineup change, and is there anything else you do?
No, I wouldn't do anything different. I think the lineup, I don't think it's necessarily set in stone. Like, they get into a postseason matchup and, they don't like the way they'll change it up if they have to, but this is a good lineup, and that's whether Merrill was hitting 5th or 6th. I will find out over time if this is producing more runs. Obviously, the numbers will eventually tell us that, but Jackson is so talented. You can put him really anywhere in the lineup, and you're going to get the same result. Woods, you're happy with the lineup as it stands?
Yeah, I mean, I was fine with it again because I was fine with it before. Because I think it was working, and I also I would just think about what Tony Jr. said maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago. He is Jackson Merrill right now because of where he's hitting. The 7 hole is vastly different than the 5, is vastly different than the 3. And like Annie said, very thoughtful move, not a knee-jerk move that
right.
A lot of managers or young managers or adult league managers would make, right? Like, well, he's just not swinging. I got to move him. No, man, I think it was a thoughtful move. And I think Jackson, again, as a rookie, has proven he can adjust to almost anything you throw at him. And he's learning from some really good adjusters on that team right now. And I think those guys have helped ease his transition a little bit too.
I think if you had a supercomputer putting together a Padres lineup, it would probably tell you need someone who walks a little more at the top of the order on base percentage. You might move Jurickson up. Ultimately, though, and this is not intended as a knock toward Xander Bogaerts, Jake Cronenworth, Kyle Higashioka, or Ha-Seong Kim, or whoever is going to be at the bottom 4. But there's 5 really good offensive players in the lineup. And right now, they're batting 1 through 5. Whatever the order is, you're getting those guys up the most. And then the other guys who sometimes can contribute at the bottom of the order. They're at the bottom of the order for a reason, and that seems correct.
Have contributed.
Absolutely.
All of them
Absolutely.
have contributed.
Can I take some dynamite and blow up your supercomputer?
Yeah,
right? It wants to?
absolutely. Yes,
Okay,
please.
thank you. I just want to make sure I can do that.
Well, and I wouldn't. I don't think you should put the.
He just meant rhetorically.
No, I know.
Don't worry.
No, but I don't think you should put the lineup together with the supercomputer. I think it works well the way
works
they have
great.
it set up right now. Even if Luis Ariz is never going to walk, and he's never going to walk, and that's okay with me.
Who
Love him at the
cares
top of
that
the
he
lineup.
doesn't
I love
walk?
leading off.
Give me those knocks.
No one cares. No,
No,
one
I don't
cares.
think anyone
Yeah.
cares.
And
Pressure-filled plate appearance, no matter what.
yeah.
Yeah.
You are getting it on probably average 6-7 pitches off of that starter to start the game.
Yep.
Like no quick out. And that's almost every time, unless he does happen to swing first pitch.
Ambush.
Which
Yeah.
Jurickson can do as well.
Oh, yeah.
Would be fine. And he was the leadoff hitter yesterday in the game. And it worked out just fine for
And we've
for the
seen
Padres.
now how this becomes a perpetual motion machine, because when you put Solano in the lineup every day, and all of a sudden now you've got 2+ hitters in the 7, 8, 9. I still think of Cronenworth as a plus hitter. I know he's slumping right now. Then those guys are getting on base. Again, I'm talking about connectedness. Those guys are getting on base for Luis Ariz.
Yeah.
Luis Ariz is coming up with 2 outs and runners in scoring position, and we've already seen he's one of the 10 hitters in baseball that managers are scared to face in that situation. He's got to be in the top 10.
Great point.
So I love where he is. In fact, Tony convinced me beyond and above over the course of the summer. Like, it's not just the numbers.
Right.
It's the way he attacks pitchers, and then it becomes him just coming up over and over and
And
over again.
it's like I said, it's a tone setter too, because it's not just him doing that. It goes down to Fernando, then it goes down to Profar, and by the time you've gone one time through this lineup, on most days, you already are in a hole, and getting through 5 is going to be tough at that point. And in the playoffs, pressure bust pipes, and if you can, once the pressure starts to add in the playoffs, which I think is a little bit different than the regular season, you start to see teams crack.
But where the Padres are really set up for their biggest innings is when the guys at the bottom of the order get
100%.
on.
Amazing.
100%.
And we've seen it, and that's when they get the 4 or 5 run innings,
Yeah.
which is why when they do, like they did yesterday, and we've talked about this probably 3 times this year, I don't want to see Jurickson Profar bunting them over. I want to see
I
them
don't
hitting.
either. I don't either,
And
Tony.
I will
Tony?
say, Tony,
Tony?
I have the wisdom to
Tony?
know that I should listen to Mike Schiltz, who knows way more about
Yes,
this,
and Tony
to
Gwynn
Jurickson
Jr.
Profar,
Yeah.
and to Tony Gwynn Jr. And no matter what you all say,
Don't have the wisdom.
I want Jurickson
I want
Profar
him swinging.
swinging with his 23 home runs and his slugging percentage. When there's nobody on and there's 2 guys on base, don't bunt him over, Jurickson. Just swing away, man, especially in the 3rd inning.
I know. I feel the same way. Just so you
Tony.
know, I feel the same.
What are we missing here?
I read both of your tweets. I read both of your tweets.
Mine, I liked mine yesterday.
and
Imagine a world where you just bunt,
bunt,
and you never
then
stop.
rolls
You
his
don't know how much power.
Did you
it
laugh?
took.
Did
And how
you
much-
laugh?
I laughed at it a little bit.
And after
but
you
I
went, "Oh,
I
God."
wanted to like.
Come
I-
on.
I thought Herm Edwards was going off on my head.
Brandon Lockridge,
Don't
bunt
press
however
in.
much you want. I'm fine with that. Jurickson, you're too good. Stop bunting.
Where was that same energy there when he was hitting 189?
It was.
Yes.
I mean, not
It
quite
was.
as much, but
It
he
was.
just had 4
Actually,
hits.
pretty
like,
much was.
It,
Yeah.
it definitely was because
I don't waver.
you tweeted around that time too.
I don't waver.
He just
I
had
don't
4
waver.
hits and a home run like 3 days
Tony,
ago.
It's called winning baseball.
Of course.
That's what it's
But
called.
okay, so again, I say it as a world-class bunter that had no confidence at the plate. I've said this before. I liked, first and second, nobody out. Oh, thank God. I'm not going to K. I'm not going to hit a double. I'm going to get one down. You know why? Because I like the pat on the butt. Attaboy, Woodsy. Attaboy. And you know what? I wasn't a good hitter. But if my 3-hole guy consistently, or one, whatever, in yesterday's case, goes up there, bink, lays one down, I'm scratching my face.
So let's break this up.
All right.
First, it isn't consistently. Jerickson has over 80 RBIs on the season. So
which is all the more reason to swing away.
It's not consistent. I think a little bit is kind of personal for you because of how you've
my history
handled bunting in the history.
I want him to believe in himself as much as I believe in him.
Believe it or not, those pat on the backs were warranted. I mean, you put your team in a position to win. And it's not to mention who he has coming up behind him. Yeah. I mean, he's got probably the hottest Padre coming up behind him. And I'm willing to live or die with that.
All right, hold on.
See, I think that's an argument against bunting. Tatis can bring him in from anywhere, from first, second. He doesn't need them to be moved over. I don't want Tatis just trying to hit a ground ball or a fly ball. I want him hitting a double and a home run.
If Hickey gets on with a single to start the inning. Then Arise gets on with a single, and you got first and second. I don't want Fernando bunting. I don't want him bunting.
Fernando may not be bunting.
I don't want him to.
No, Fernando will not be bunting.
Okay,
I don't want him to.
So you're
but
everybody's happy.
Is it? That's on. Jurickson made that call. Yeah,
of course,
100%.
Of course.
He said that one time after he bunted, he was like, "Did you see the rest of my? Did you see? I went 0 for 4. Let me bunt." Like,
and y'all was mad. I know for a fact y'all was mad about that one.
I was not mad at the 0 for 4.
He wasn't swinging the bat well. In this case, he's swinging the bat well. But you know what? He's thinking to himself, you know what? I'm gonna give my teammate the better
and
shot.
He's thinking Framber Valdez is a tough customer. It's going to be hard to score runs. Let's try to get one.
The point is, there are a bunch of different reasons why a guy chooses to do that. You don't think Jerickson wants to be the dude in that spot? Of course he does.
I get it.
He's thinking about winning. And when you have that mindset versus just going back to last year, and not to pick on him because he addressed it himself, which I love. When you have a mindset of protecting yourself or thinking about yourself, that festers across the way.
It does.
Right? Now, we're deep enough in the season. Jerickson's done this enough times where I'm sure guys would not have thought that.
Yes.
However, it's emblematic. It's not. It's evidence of how they conduct themselves as a unit.
How they're thinking.
And how they think.
Yep.
And so in a vacuum, I understand what you're talking about, but this is a bigger picture deal for these guys.
You can always hit sand with me. I will never take it personally because I love you. I respect your knowledge.
Yeah, no, I know you wouldn't, but
it makes
just in case you did, I didn't want to
I screamed. How I screamed at the TV yesterday.
But guys, he told you.
I know he did.
Told you. He said, "I am Profar."
Yeah, I'm Profar.
If I put the bunt down, it's because it's the right play.
That's right.
And if I'm putting it down, it's going to work because I am Profar.
Profar.
That's him telling you, let the professionals do the
Correct.
thing. That's what.
So
that's
I'm
what
good.
that is.
That's it. And you have one of your best hitters, one of your best players that's been on this team this year doing that, what Tony just mentioned. What does that look like to the rest of the lineup?
How about this? Because we bring this up on the flip side all the time, right? Why can't, when we put a superstar in the box because he's unwilling to give up the me moment, right? We criticize those guys often. Here, Profar is, who may not be the superstar of the team, but is having one of the best years on the season. Yet, as he said, I'm Profar. Know thyself.
Know thyself.
Yeah, but also know who's behind you. If like Luis Arise or Xander's coming up and they got a real good chance for a single to drive in too, I think it's the right play. With Tatis or Manny coming up and so much power there, I think the right play is to just have 3 chances
So you
differentiate
between Arise and who was the other one you said?
Xander.
And Xander.
Yeah,
versus
more singles than power.
Okay, but
versus
hang
the
on.
power guys that are coming up.
Let me throw one other thing into the soup here, all right? Because we talked about this yesterday. Guess which team leads baseball in ground ball double plays?
Padres.
The Padres lead all of Major League Baseball in ground ball double plays. Jurickson Profar has plenty of double plays. He eliminated the opportunity of a double play right there, which is the #1 thing that kills San Diego Padres offensive rallies in 2024.
Every time.
All right. Well, I mean, by that logic, then, when we get to the playoffs and you're facing the Framber Valdez's of the world, are we playing for 1 run every single time in the 3rd inning, 4th inning? I mean, I think in order to, we've got really good pitching, we got a really good bullpen. You're going to have to throw some crooked innings up there. And boy, what a good lineup to do it. We've certainly done it a ton. We also have one of the best offenses in baseball as well, despite our leading the league in ground balls.
That is historically inaccurate. You don't play
defense,
big game or big high run scoring games come playoff time.
But you want your best hitters. And I think Jurickson has been one of our best hitters. you want them trying to drive in runs, not
Yes.
giving the best pitchers in the
I
world
love
an
that
extra
you
out.
said in the third or fourth inning,
Yeah,
which we did, which is not when we were talking about the previous bunt. That happened a little bit later on in the ball game,
Yeah.
right? So when you're talking first half of the game, yes,
Yeah.
of course, guys are. Jerickson Profar, my guess is third or fourth inning, Jerickson Profar is not laying down that same bunt. We get down into
the playoffs,
in the playoffs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Got
We
it.
get into deeper into the game. He's
And that's true. I agree
he's
with that.
100%
too.
different.
I agree with it
different.
too. Yeah, 100%.
All right, so 97.3, very friendly Padres Roundtable, presented by
Why don't we just do an
Roundtable
hour
Pizza.
on bunting?
By the way,
I can do
we
two
covered that
shows.
whole
Please
subject
did
last
you?
week.
Of course you did.
Yeah, we did.
Please don't.
Let's talk about that team to the north. Padres currently 3.5 games behind the Dodgers. Got 3 still against LA. Dodgers pitching is in shambles, riddled with injuries. Even Dodgers fans are starting to kind of give up some hope. However, the remaining schedule definitely favors the Dodgers outside of those 3 games. How realistic do you think, Annie, is a path to the division title with 9 games left in the season?
It's not out of the question for me. They're not mathematically out of it. I've seen, to me, a lot of things can change in a week. And while the Dodgers do have the Rockies and the Marlins, I mean, look, the Diamondbacks lost 2 games to the Rockies. The Dodgers did lose to the Marlins, earlier in the series. You just never know what's going to happen. And the Padres are just so locked in right now that if you do get a little of that weirdness happening, they've got a chance to just zoom right past. Is it a long shot? A little bit? Yeah. I mean, like the numbers, the games are ticking down. It's a bit of a long shot, but I don't think it's impossible for them at all.
Craig, I think there is a path, but I think it requires the Padres either winning out or maybe only losing once, and not to the Dodgers. And then I'm not saying they can't do that, but you cannot expect any help the rest of the way outside of yourself.
So we had a whole segment on this yesterday on Annie and Elston, and the number is 5%. It was yesterday, and then the Dodgers won a game, so it's less than that now today because another day's off the calendar. So there's somewhere around a 4% chance. So if you run 100 scenarios of the last 10 games, 4 times the Dodgers either lose enough or we just sweep out. And that's how the Padres win the division. But there's 2 paths to the Padres winning the division. One is the Padres sweep out, and the other one is that the Dodgers just tank out and they lose a ton of games. And believe me, there's some LA fans who believe that's going to happen. I'll give their club enough respect to say, by the way, the last 4 games they've scored 8, 9, 8, and 8 runs. So they're going to slug their way into the division championship, barring us sweeping out. And can it happen? Sure. Do I plan on stuff like that? Of course not. It's a magic number is 6. Is 8? 8. No, 5 to clinch a playoff, but I think it's 8 to clinch home field.
Home field, yeah.
And that's the number I'm thinking about the rest of the way.
We talked about it a little bit on our show, but if you go back in time, had the Dodgers not acquired Jack Flaherty, Tony, I mean, they would have almost nothing left. And the Tigers are probably going, why did we trade Jack Flaherty? They're a half game out of a playoff spot right now, even trading one of their 2 best pitchers. That turned out to be maybe saved the Dodgers' regular season. I don't know if it'll save them in the playoffs, but Flaherty, without him, I don't even know what they'd have left.
Yeah, they'd be in trouble for sure. They could very well be in trouble anyway, even with Jack and how well he's pitched. This is one of the rare situations where it seems like the injuries could be too much to overcome. I mean, it's not that they haven't had injuries in that organization. They've just always been able to find a way to overcome them with some aging bats in the kind of do everything role like a Chris Taylor. Those guys aren't playing well, and it really has kind of reverted. Plus, adding how Gavin Lux has played in the second half, it's still really the big 3 and him. After that lineup is just not as deep as it used to be, and they don't have the starting pitching or the bullpen for that matter to kind of scramble over that.
Well, you can't always make baseball make sense, but I would think as a Padres fan, you'd like to see the inverse of 2020 when the Padres went into a playoff series against the Dodgers with no pitching left.
None.
None. And you kind of think, okay, now the shoe's on the other foot this time around. Hopefully the result will be exactly the same in reverse, that when those 2 teams, if they do end up meeting, the Dodgers just won't have the arms to match up with the Padres in a series.
Well,
like that.
and like we talked about today, I think, when the clock strikes October and the first game of the playoffs is here, the Dodgers will probably have a bye, be able to get a little bit healthier. But for them, what killed them is the guys that they always are touting as the next great one, and we all buy into it. We believe it. If you watch Bobby Miller's first start this season, you went, oh my God, I can't believe they did it again. They did it again. They got another superstar ace who's controllable, young. They'll have him. They'll pay him. He's phenomenal. He went off the cliff. He's been terrible. Sent down yesterday. Michael Grove is hurt, who is another stud. Landon Knack's pretty good, but again, and Tony was talking about those role players, the aging guys. They still scare the crap out of me because everything turns to zero. Chris Taylor's 170, whatever average, zero. Just like Ohtani's, just like Mookie's, and all these guys are like, okay, the grind is over. Get a little breather, reset ourselves. So, yeah, man, anytime you have a lineup of Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, I'm not letting Dodger fans off the hook. If they go down, injuries happen to everybody. You still have a ridiculous lineup full of...
As you said, they're about to still get a bye.
Get a bye.
They've been good enough to do that.
That's exactly right. So they're still a team that scares me, as does every single team that makes it in October.
Just one last little button on that, though, as I'm thinking through it. Even if the Padres don't win the division, and I do feel if the season was 3 weeks longer, which is something that I know we all want.
At least Chris Ello could be here for part of the last.
So Ello could at least show up
for a week.
But one thing that could happen is that Milwaukee could push past LA.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking
the Dodgers could bump into the no-buy scenario, which could be a bye-bye scenario.
That would be toast. They may be toast then.
If I'm the Mets or the Diamondbacks, whoever ends up finishing the third wild card, I might almost rather see the Dodgers than the Brewers in that 3-6 wild card matchup. And then whoever gets that second bye, gets the winner of that series, is a pretty good spot to be. So Brewers and Dodgers have a lot to play for in that 2-3 slot. Even if the Padres don't catch the Dodgers, that's an interesting scenario here at the end of the National League.
Well, I think Craig nailed it. As the 8 is really the only number we should be thinking about right now, and that's home field advantage in the first round of the wild card. And Petco Park, they'll jam 55,000 in there maybe, and let's get nuts and 3 games at home, hopefully just 2. And I think that's what they need to focus on right now, certainly. Well, actually, focus on beating Garrett Crochet tomorrow, and that's it.
There you go.
7th inning stretch time in our Padres 97.3 The Fan Roundtable, presented by Roundtable Pizza. A little break from the Padres discussion.
What about your favorite bunt of all time? How about that?
Today's
Everyone's
question,
no?
We will hit the autumnal equinox this week and summer giving way to fall. So I'd like everyone's opinion on the flavor combination known as pumpkin spice and what it should and should not be used on. Tony, are you a pumpkin spice person at all?
I am not a pumpkin spice guy. I
no
detest
lattes.
pumpkin spice.
You detest it?
Yes.
I like normal pumpkin pie. I do not like pumpkin spice flavored anything. I'm a
It belongs
peppermint
in pumpkin
mocha,
pie.
but I don't like pumpkin spice latte or pumpkin spice cereal or pumpkin spice bread.
Pumpkin
or
spice cereal.
I saw that at Trader
If you go to
Joe's the
Trader
other day.
Joe's, everything is pumpkin spice right
Everything.
now.
Pumpkin spice biscuits. I don't
Pumpkin
know.
spice spaghetti carbonara. They have everything pumpkin spice. It's
Taking
insane.
Too
over.
much.
I like pumpkin spice cheese. No, I'm joking. I don't really. Yeah, beef jerky, pumpkin spice. No,
It exists, I promise you.
We are a big fall family.
I know
we
you
are
are.
a huge fall family.
Christmas decorations are going up probably within the next couple of weeks.
But we
at the
don't skip
Woodsong.
Halloween and we don't skip Thanksgiving, and we are. There'll be a pumpkin spice candle that smells amazing, but
I like pumpkin spice candle.
good.
I don't
Same.
want it in my drink.
I don't want it in my food.
Nothing.
No, I love pumpkin pie though, man. I like
Pumpkin pie is good,
I
though.
like Halloween. I like all of it.
I love Halloween.
Halloween's the best. It's the best.
I do not like pumpkin spice, anything other than pumpkin pie.
Right.
And I don't know why it started migrating into everything else.
I don't either.
And who called for this? Who
It's
asked for
perfume
this?
at this point. I mean, what's on your neck before you leave the house?
I don't need a pumpkin Oreo. You know?
Yeah, they have those.
I don't need any of that.
Well, pumpkin on its own is actually pretty hideous.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So
People first called everything
smell-
pumpkin flavored. No, you don't want anything pumpkin flavored. That's a squash, and it doesn't taste good. All right, White Sox are coming to town. Given our general overall sense of worry as a fan base.
We can start with Craig on this one.
12.
What would be your advice to approach this series as a fan, Craig?
Oh, I like this question.
Obviously it's baseball. Things can go wrong. There's, you can't always expect a sweep, yet you kind of expect a sweep. But what happens if it doesn't happen? How do you approach this last home series as a fan against the worst team in baseball?
Dread,
Alcohol.
yeah, dread, anxiety.
That's not a fun way.
Pumpkin spice Xanax.
I mean, yeah, I'm considering are there any pumpkin spice gummies? Like, what can we get to take care of this weekend? No, I mean, look, I feel just the exact same way as when we play the crappy Rockies, which is when you win, it's like, okay, yeah, you're supposed to win.
Good for you.
And when you lose, it's like, oh my God. That was a game you were supposed to win. Now, let me tell you, this last week has taken the pressure off this series.
Oh, yeah.
So, unless you think we're going to win the NL West where we have to win out, and that would be a way where I'd be literally panicking. Like, we've got to win all 3 of these games. But honestly, we probably don't have to win all 3 of these games anymore to get where we want to get, which is the playoffs. So, I would actually go out. I will be out as a fan on Friday to celebrate the team, and it's the last home weekend before we're paying playoff prices, and hopefully we've got those playoff games. So go out there and enjoy it.
Yeah, you say that you don't have to necessarily win, and you probably don't. At the same time, the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks, you got 2 playoff teams the last week, and they will be battling, and those are going to be tough games. The last 6, these are your last 3 to really make hay. Padres have done really well, Woods, the second half of the season against the lesser opponents.
Sure.
They had their troubles in the first half against the Rockies and a little bit in the second half, the Angels, but for the most part, I think they're, what are they, 26-2? Craig, you have the number of the record against teams
27-6 in their last 33.
against teams with sub 500 records. This should be a celebration. This should be a fun weekend, and we're all looking at it like this can only be disastrous for the Padres.
Baseball fans, man. That's how we are wired, essentially. And I do think, I don't think you really change your perspective on it. To expect a sweep is a fool's errand, my friend. That is a fool's errand. Beating a team of 26 prideful men that want to keep their job, that get paid for a job, that want to get a job next year, and know that other teams are watching them potentially. Man, to go in there and expect it, I don't think there's any way any of those players are like, whew, at least it's the White Sox coming in. At least they know better. They played 150 games. They know exactly what to expect. So I think you go out, you figure out a game plan on waiting out Garrett Crochet, who's their best player or pitcher, and figure out a way to not let Andrew Benintendi beat you and Yohan Moncada. And other than that, man, try to hit the ball hard, good hard 90s, and take the extra bag and do all the things that you've done all season long. And I think the chips at the end of the weekend, yeah, man, I think you win 2 out of 3, and I'm happy with that. If they win 2 out of 3, you can't lose this series.
And that's how the team needs to approach it. But Andy, what about the fans? Like, what's the mindset going into this series for fans?
To me, the mindset is go to Petco Park or watch at home and enjoy the last regular season homestand type feel that this team has given you this year. I think I agree. I think take the series personally. Yeah. I think that I read the story about that Jeff Passan wrote. He wrote a very long feature about the White Sox and how their clubhouse is actually more united than people might think, and how they're working hard really still. And I believe that. I don't know if they have it in them at this point, but I think you take them seriously. I think you try to win the series. I think Steven Wilson should probably find AJ Preller somewhere and give him a few choice words. But other than that, I think fans should probably just enjoy it, and the players should just keep continuing to play the way that they have up to this point.
So, Tony, we agree. We're all pushing back on anyone that says the sky is falling if they lose one of these 3.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think my advice to fans is trust your team at this point. If this ain't enough games to trust your team, trust your manager, nothing's going to save you at this point. So I agree. And if you're also expecting a sweep, you're setting yourself up for failure. So, win the series, continue to do what they've been doing.
Tony, as long as you played, and being a part of some really, really good teams, and when you play those down teams, what do you see in them? I mean, can you look across sometimes and go, oh, yeah, they're done. They gave up. They're done.
For sure.
And then you look across and you go, oh,
Oh, they're trying to
They're
spoil.
trying to do something.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
That energy is apparent immediately when the game starts. But I think for the Padres, I think the really good thing about this ball club is once it turns to the second half, like there has just been kind of this mindset that I don't even know that they see the jersey, when they're out there.
Yeah.
It's just about them executing, playing the game, doing what the scoreboard's telling them to do. And that's why they've been successful.
Just one last little bit more serious note, which is that, as again, these are paid professionals that also have gone through this dog day of summer of being so horribly bad, but now they see the finish line too, and they see an ability to not be the worst team in history.
Yeah.
And I do truly believe that's a motivator. I remember that
100%.
awful 2003 Tigers team, they won 4 of their last 5 to finish at 119 losses and not be the Mets. So the Mets have held that since 62. White Sox won some games this week.
They did.
They're going to come in trying. I really believe they're playing the hardest that they've played all year right now to try and avoid history.
Yeah, they lost 20 straight series and before winning the last one. So they're definitely not trying to be history.
All right, in honor of the White Sox coming to town for our last question, and for the 4 of us, it's more the worst team you've ever covered or been a fan of. But for Tony, it's what was the worst team you were ever on and why? Why was it so bad?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's either the 09 Pods, but we finished with the best record in the second half. So
All right.
I would say the 14 Phillies I was on.
And what made them just not good?
We were older, and not a lot of guys liked each other.
What about the fans? How bad were the fans?
Philly,
They're always bad.
They were crushing us, and we deserved to be crushed. We weren't very good. We still had all of the guys that won World Series there, but they were older. There was just not a good mix of not a good chemistry team at all. And so it got out the gate all right, and then it just gradually got worse.
Annie, doesn't even have to be baseball. You've covered football teams.
You knew
as
where I was
well.
going.
Yeah.
Covering the Chargers during the relocation years, during the years where they were half in San Diego and half finding a new home somewhere else, and how just torturous that was for fans and for players, and the questions, and it was a cloud that loomed over those seasons. You can never get away from it.
Now, Woods, you've always kind of, you're a Yankees fan growing up, Notre Dame, kind of front runner. What's the worst team you ever were a fan of?
I mean,
Yeah, you.
When your dad abandons you when you're a child, and your mom remarries when you're 10, and you've never had a father to throw the ball with or teach you how to hit, didn't really know anything about sports. You thought your grandfather was your dad. Now you can't relate. You were off to Del Mar in the Rolls Royce, riding on the Lakers plane.
Court seat at the Lakers
riding
game.
on the Lakers plane. Speaking of front runners,
Some of us didn't live that life.
no one. Yes, a lot of us had it a little bit difficult. Eating canned salmon, for dinner at your grandparents' house.
Second Street in El Cajon.
Sardines and crackers.
Yeah. It's funny. My dad. If my dad had been a fan of the Reds, I would have been a Red fan. If he was a fan of the Brewers, I would have been a Brewer fan. So whatever he liked, I liked. Just immediately. And I remember he gets me really into baseball, and I'd never swung a bat. I'd never thrown a ball until I was 10. Got such a late start. So I'll do I'll just talk about my first year of playing baseball. I was on a team called the Cobras.
Oh.
And we had the old pirate round hats.
Oh,
They were round.
yes.
My very first little league
Classic.
team.
Pillbox hat.
Round hat.
That's awesome.
With a cobra on it. And I
want that hat.
remember I did not foul off a pitch. I didn't touch a ball with the bat, which is why I learned how to bunt for the whole first season. And it's amazing I ever went back and did it again.
That's.
But I loved it, and I kept practicing,
That's
kept
awesome.
playing, but that was by far the worst team I've ever seen or been a part of, and it was mostly my fault.
Well, I brought up the 2003 Tigers that lost 119 games. They swept the 2003 Padres.
Oh my God!
At Qualcomm
You can answer for
Stadium,
both of us. We had
and
to
that
do
was
every
that
single
was
pre- and
our
post-game
answer.
show.
Is the 2003 Padres?
I missed one day for the birth of my son and did the other 161 of that god awful season when they were supposed to be in Petco Park already, and it got delayed. So they just said, you know what? we just won't care about the team for a couple of years until we get into Petco
We'll
Park.
pick it back up then.
Tony, your dad had already retired.
Yeah,
It's
he was gone at that point.
We are in the
I feel for
absolute
you.
interregnum between what we were and what we're going to be, and it's just like we got to put out a roster. So
That's tough.
here it is.
As far as
Real
coverage,
tough right
the
there.
barbershop quartet.
but Benny, what was wasn't last year? Didn't last year almost kill us?
Oh, that's true. It
Because the
did.
expectations were
It
so
did.
high. It almost
too
killed
many good players.
Yeah, too
Oh,
many good
man.
players.
Yeah, at least they got to watch some good players.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched some good players.
At least Juan Soto had 35 home runs.
That's true.
Kinsale.
Oh, my.
Brandon Villaferde.
Surrogate
Come on.
Gene Kinsale. Yeah.
That's right.
All right, well, that is the end of the penultimate edition of our regular season Padres Roundtable, brought to you by Roundtable Pizza. It is pizza royalty. When we come back next week, we'll be down to the last 3 games of the year and looking forward to the postseason, hopefully. Thank you to Tony Gwynn Jr., Annie Heilbrunn, Stephen Woods, Craig Elston. Annie and Elston are coming up next. Don't go anywhere on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. So long, everybody.